Well, it's time for our Bible class for Wednesday, and today we are moving into Forbidden Gates. And Forbidden Gates, which we've been reading through, we're going to be doing chapters 6 and 7. And so if you have your Forbidden Gates book, make sure you have that out and ready to go. If not, just put pause on the video and I will wait. Well, you can just wait as long as you want and then hit restart and then I'll start reading. I'm going to start reading in chapter 6. It's called Speaking the Truth. Fish and fruits, nut and fig cakes, olives and delicately flavored locusts all filled Nathan's dish at the feast that afternoon. Around him, more than 50 guests reclined at the tables enjoying the meal. Their laughter and happy talk swelled to the roof of the mansion's large upper room. Nathan's father ate beside him. He was keeping him occupied with light conversation, and Nathan knew that, as both parent and a Markle, he was trying to prevent him from worrying about the moments that would follow the feast. Then Nathan would have to rise to read the scriptures and make his short speech on God's 10 holy laws in front of this large group. While they were talking, Nathan saw Asher get up from another table. He marched directly to Nathan's side and motioned for him and his father to leave their couches. Behind the dark draperies that screened the weekday serving tables from the hall, Asher confronted them in a low, worried voice. "There are some priests at this feast, brother, who are spreading ugly rumors about your son. I do not think it is wise for Nathan to stay within view of these men." "Not stay?" Benjamin exclaimed. "These people are our friends, Asher. This party is for my son. How could you possibly suggest this?" Asher plucked at his beard. "Even as I was dining with Obed and some of the others," he explained, "they were pointing out how closely Nathan resembles the boy who was seen with the heathen in the court of Israel." Nathan's breath caught in his throat. His father groaned as he looked at Nathan. "How can this be?" Nathan's tongue was rough and dry with silence. "I did not want a confrontation, son," his father said steadily. Wrinkles skirted his lips and eyes in ways that Nathan had not seen before. "But now I must have the truth from you. Tell me everything." He raised his chin slightly as if bracing himself for the coming words. Asher popped his head out through the slit between the curtains. He pulled it back. "Benjamin, you can't possibly choose this moment for discussion. Think of our guests. Everyone's wondering." "I want to know the facts. I want them now," Nathan's father said coolly. Nathan sighed. "What is being said is true," he struggled. "I am that Jew." "It can't be true," Asher exclaimed. Nathan looked at his uncle with wild surprise. "Why do you say that? You know everything about it. Why are you saying that you do not know?" Benjamin looked from Nathan to Asher. "What is going on, Asher? I demand the truth." "Shh!" Asher put his hand on Benjamin's shoulder. "Remember the guests. Believe me, it would be better for you not to know everything." "This concerns my son," Benjamin whispered angrily. Nathan could not hold back. "I led the heathen through the gate, father. He was the boy you saw in the bird market. Everything inside me wishes that I hadn't, but I did. And what is done is done." His father grabbed Nathan's arm. With a violent shake, he pleaded, "Why? Why did you do this?" Nathan looked to the ceiling. "I am not sure," he said. "At first I thought it was the trade he offered, a look into the temple in exchange for two small, beautifully carved doves." Asher slapped his cheeks. "God of our fathers, now idols have come into this? What next?" "No," Nathan protested. "Believe me, father, they weren't idols to me. I don't even have those things anymore. And it wasn't because of the carvings that I led him in. It was because—" His father squeezed his wrist. "Tell me the truth." The hurt in his father's face sliced Nathan's heart. "I can hardly speak of it now," he choked, "but somehow I felt shamed when the boy talked to me about my religion. Somehow he made me feel that he really wanted to know the Eternal One, and that we Jews were the ones who were keeping him from finding God." "And that's why you took him through the sorg?" Asher finished for him. I know it seems senseless now," Nathan stammered, "but somehow it seemed right then." He managed to look at his father. Tears filled Benjamin's eyes. Nathan bit his lip. It was awful to see his father so upset. He reached for his father's arm. "I am sorry," he whispered. "Forgive me for what I've done." Asher broke in. "Benjamin, you've got to get back to your table." Nathan's father crossed his arms. "Just one more thing. Tomorrow, Nathan, you will go before the Sanhedrin. You will tell what you have done, and even if it means flogging, yes, flogging." He stopped as a sudden gasp of despair escaped from his breath. "You will take the punishment you deserve." All this can be avoided, I'm telling you, Asher interrupted, if you just let Nathan slip away now until this thing blows over. Say that he has suddenly taken ill. Nathan's father turned on him angrily. God detests lying, especially from the lips of the Amarkal's sons and priests. He was trembling with rage. Nathan is not ill. I will not lie even to protect my son. Asher grabbed his brother's robe. Benjamin, I beg you, do not let your son go through with the ceremony today. After he reads the scriptures at this feast, he will be formally accepted in the congregation. From that moment on, he will have to endure the letter of the law as a Jewish man. But before that moment, he is still considered a child. Don't you see? Keep him from this ceremony. Protect him from being punished by the Sanhedrin. Benjamin closed his eyes. Asher gave Nathan a thin, nervous grin. Brother, we both know the importance of keeping Nathan in good standing at the temple. After all, someday he will be in line for your position. He brought his palms together so well, I already gave my word to the leaders that Nathan was not even inside the temple yesterday. What a liar you are, Benjamin glared. I want you out of my house this instant. Brother, think what you're doing, Asher pleaded. I have been working for Nathan's good. I'll leave, as you wish, but only if Nathan comes with me. Nathan's father answered Asher with a word, never. Then he took hold of Nathan's shoulder. Within the hour, son, you will publicly embrace the law. You will join the congregation of Israel. Painfully, his father pulled back the curtain, and Nathan walked out before the faces of the guests who were waiting for him. At his father's direction, he moved to the place of honor. Obed, a chief priest and friend of Asher, walked up through the silent audience and presented Nathan the scroll. With trembling hands, Nathan removed the protective claws from it. He took the stiff, precious parchment which had been exposed and put it to his lips. He kissed God's holy word, and with all eyes fixed upon him, he unrolled the book and began to read the portion expected of him. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy might, or with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. Then he rolled the scroll to read the 10 great laws God had given them. His voice stopped as his eyes found the words. The jagged Hebrew letters stabbed out toward him. Laws that God had first written on stone with the finger of his hand now seemed to be carved on the tender flesh of Nathan's own heart. He realized he was standing there taking fast gulps of hot air. He struggled to read, but no sound moved from his lips, or sounds moved from his lips. Within the crowd, he saw Obed's frown, Asher's nervous shifting, his father's pained eye. Suddenly he laid the scroll on the table. I am not worthy to read the holy word, he stammered. Before he could stop himself, he had run out of the banquet room and down into the street. The hot evening air hit Nathan like a knife. It warned him that he was cutting himself off from everything safe and precious to him, his home, his father, his life as a Jew. Several houses away, he stopped and looked back. Perhaps his father would leave his guests. Perhaps he would come after him. Nathan stood at the end of the street until the sun melted into the horizon and the air had cooled. But as gray shadows grouped around him, they sealed his fear. His father was letting him go. He would need to find a place to spend the night. With a heavy heart, Nathan walked downhill into the narrow pathways of the lower city. The shops and workshops and artisans' homes lay as tight as grain in the heads of ripened wheat. He had never been alone in this part of the city at night. No richer than a beggar now, he eyed the doorways looking for a place where he might rest. The first notch he found in a wall was occupied by a drunkard. The second still held the stench of drifters who had come before him. Before he could find a third, a stinking, toothless robber pinned him against the potter's shed. Your fine tunic, the belt you wear, he growled. I want them now. Nathan was left with only the thin, short tunic that he wore next to his skin. Shivering, he bit his knuckles to keep from crying. Even his precious ring was gone. At his feet lay a dark cloak. He picked up the rough, vile-smelling robe and put it around his shoulders. God of my fathers, he begged as he fell to his knees, have mercy on me, or I will be dead by morning. Chapter 7, Alone on the Streets. Beneath the weight of the beggar's coat, Nathan walked toward the Temple Mount, the one place he could think of that offered comfort. At the southwest corner of the temple, a huge archway of stairs rose from the streets of the lower city. Nathan's mind was fixed on going underneath the bridge that was formed by this gigantic walkway. There, beneath the stairs and against the temple wall, he might at last find a place to rest. But when Nathan arrived, his heart sank. Fires already glowed in the shadow of the stairway. The pavement was filled with others who were spending the night there in the streets. From the psalms the people sang, he guessed they were Jewish travelers waiting out the end of the Sabbath before starting their journey home. Sadly, Nathan turned away. He kicked out at a small dark dog that came rushing at him and then noticed a little girl toddling away from the campfire. "I'll help you," Nathan offered. "Show me where your mother is." The girl gave him a little smile and grabbed onto the cloak at Nathan's knee. They walked a short way until they met a woman from the group of eating campers. "My thanks," she said. "I turned my back for one moment and she was gone." Nathan nodded. He pried himself loose from the girl's tight little fist. The sight of an orange cooking fire in the street and the aroma of stew weakened him with homesickness. A lanky man with short curly hair joined them. "Man, come sit with us," he said in a hearty voice to Nathan. "Looks like you might be in need of a resting place." Nathan shrugged nervously and followed him into the circle of firelight. Around him, men were reclining on their elbows and talking with each other. Women were serving supper or rocking sleepy children while singing to them. Overhead, the wide span of the temple stairway protected all the people who planned to spend the night in the street. The mother of the little girl returned to Nathan, and she handed him thick chunks of bread and cheese. Nathan took it with thanks as he sat down, though he wasn't the least bit hungry. Uneasily, he looked around. The woman's husband noticed his hesitation. "It's fine to eat with us," he smiled. "Go on. From the condition of your cloak, I'll judge you haven't had real food for a week." Nathan looked down at himself in shame. Of course, without cap or robe, he looked like a heathen beggar. I'm a Jew," he stammered. The man's grin widened, though his eyes showed surprise. "Well, so are we," he nodded. "Now relax and eat." Nathan frowned. "But a Jew doesn't eat without washing his hands." The man's mouth dropped open. "You really are a Jew, aren't you?" he said with a puzzled laugh. He looked around and called to a youth who was skirting the light of the fire. "Young man, could you hand me my wife's water jar over there?" The boy came with the water. The face behind the clay jar caught Nathan's attention. "Dorian?" he cried with disbelief. "Dorian, how can it be you?" "I know you too." Dorian's dark eyes widened, and the water jar crashed to the pavement. "From the temple, you're—" He stopped sharply. "Nathan," Nathan supplied breathlessly, moving away from the puddle made by the broken water vessel. Because of the sound of broken pottery, all eyes were on him. "You two know each other?" the man who was standing near them asked. "Yes," Dorian exclaimed. "He's the Jew who first started my search for God." Nathan looked away. "You're supposed to be in prison. I heard you'd probably be sold as a slave." "It's a wonderful act of God," Dorian shouted with his hands in the air. "Today the tribune freed me into the care of a Jewish man, and all afternoon I have been with him as he moved through the town. Many others have believed there is a God." A shadow of anger darkened Nathan's heart. It must have shown on his face, for Dorian leaned close with a look of surprise. "What is it? Why aren't you ready to share my joy?" Nathan's throat ached as the anger grew. "I risked everything for you," he clenched his teeth. "Look at me, in beggar's robes. I traded my house, my father, my life for you. Yet you are free without my help. I could have kept my mouth shut, but now I've lost everything, for nothing." Dorian threw his arms around Nathan. "Then you did care about me. You didn't take me to the temple just to return for the carvings," he said. "In prison, I sealed my lips to protect you, Nathan, and I spoke a prayer for you, too." Nathan punched Dorian in the ribs so hard that the boy landed in the dust. "Shut your heathen mouth," Nathan roared while Dorian sat shaking his head to clear his vision. "You shamed God with your reckless tongue, and you have shamed me, too. I cursed the day I met you." He spit at Dorian's feet to punctuate his words. Dorian slowly rose and brushed his drab tunic. "Nathan," he panted, "please, you don't understand. I have met God. This would have never happened if I had not met you." Before Nathan could protest, the boy put his hands to his mouth and shouted, "Stephen, over here! I have found the one who set my steps towards Christ." "I did no such thing," Nathan protested. "I follow God. I have nothing to do with false messiahs." Suddenly, the wound on his cheek, which he had not thought about all afternoon, started throbbing again. "This is the boy who led me through the Soreg," Dorian boasted as Stephen neared. "His name's Nathan." Stephen smiled. "Nathan," he said with satisfaction, "so we meet for a third time. Surely God himself must have his reasons for this." Nathan ignored Stephen's words and turned angrily on Dorian. Tell the whole world that we've been in the temple together." His voice cracked with emotion. "It can do no harm now. I am as homeless and as poor as you are because of this time we spent together." He walked away from the fire so that no one could see the tears fall on his cheeks. Nathan felt Dorian's hand on his waist. "I see it now for the first time, Nathan, how I have hurt you. You truly have lost everything for me. No wonder my friendship seems worthless to you." Through his tears of anger, Nathan saw that Dorian's eyes were wet, too. After a long silence, Stephen joined them. "Nathan, why do you come here in a beggar's robe? This morning I saw you with an Amarkel. I assumed he was your father." Nathan's lip quivered. "He is, but he will probably never speak to me again. Ever since I met Dorian, things have been going wrong. I was to join the congregation of Israel today, but I didn't. Instead, I ran away from everything to nothing. A thief even stole the clothes off my back." With a steady hand, Stephen raised Nathan's trembling chin. "Look at me, son," he said. "I think God's Spirit is moving in your heart." "God's Spirit rests in the great Holy of Holies inside the temple," Nathan spouted angrily. "How can you say that God moves inside men's hearts?" "Because God himself has told us this," Stephen replied. "Jesus Christ made this promise to his disciples that they would know this Spirit dwelleth in you and shall be in you." "I'm not interested in the words of some poor carpenter," Nathan protested wearily. Stephen held out open hands. "Then listen to the words of your own prophet Isaiah. He was despised and rejected. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities, and with his stripes we are healed." Nathan sighed. "You think this speaks of your Jesus on the cross, don't you?" Yes, I do," Stephen told him. "You were at the temple today for the celebration," he observed. "You saw for yourself how the Spirit of God works in the hearts of men and women who heard our message." Stephen looked at Nathan and started humming. Then he added the words, "Open to me the gates of righteousness. I will go into them, and I will praise and give thanks to the Lord. This gate of the Lord into which the righteous shall enter. I will praise thee, for thou hast heard me, and art become my salvation." "You know the Hallel by heart?" Nathan said with surprise. "Yes, every line of it, and today, as never before, I celebrate every word," Stephen exclaimed. "Remember the next phrase, the one about the stone that the builders reject? The one that becomes the most important cornerstone?" Stephen nodded. "Jesus Christ has become like that for me, rejected by so many, but precious to everyone who believes in him. Doesn't it amaze you that God would choose this very day to pour out his Spirit among us, while these words from the Hallel are on so many lips? But who is paying enough attention to even think about it? God is in our midst, yet most people just go on living their own way." Nathan dragged his sandal across the stone street. "It's clear that we hold very few ideas in common," he said. "I think I should go." Stephen smiled sadly. "Go where?" he asked, but he didn't wait for a reply. "Dorian and I were going to camp here in the street with these people. So many have come to know Jesus Christ today, but a little while ago, other followers who live in Jerusalem invited us to stay with them. Why don't you come too? Share our food and shelter, and see for yourself if there is enough evidence to believe that God has sent the Messiah to us." All right, well, that's it for the chapters to read today. And we'll do the next chapter tomorrow, chapter 7. And then you'll have to wait till next week to get the end of it. Don't read ahead. I know that some of you are tempted to, but don't do it. It'll be worth it in the long run once you get to read it next week. And by the way, we will be reading it on Tuesday and Wednesday next week, so it won't be that long to have to wait anyway. Well, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you tomorrow. You have a couple of pages to do that you see there in your work in your syllabus. And for Wednesday, what you have to do for Bible is to work text pages 180 and 181 and work text page 311. Have a good day. Bye.